Hello, I'm Karen, and I'm here to share with you the steps for the scientific method of investigation. We'll also take a look at how Adriana could use this scientific method in a future CNA job at AdultEdMed. Now, although 24-year-old Adriana is a little timid about speaking English in large groups, she looks forward to working with patients and speaking with them one-on-one. She has the strong desire to work in the medical field, and she's confident that her English will continue to improve as she works at AdultEdMed. As a CNA, Adriana will not only need to talk with patients and staff, but she will also have to use some investigative strategies as well. You may see today that you and Adriana already know a lot about the scientific method, and you probably use it almost every day. Stay with me for a few minutes and I'll show you what I mean. The GED or HiSET science test that you will take to get your high school equivalency will focus in part on the fundamentals of scientific reasoning and investigation. Knowing that this is information needed to pass the test makes it academically important. But is it possible that understanding the techniques of scientific investigation and the scientific method could be useful to you every day? I say yes, and in this lesson we'll see why. Today, we will take a look at how to rely on the scientific method of investigation and challenge some conclusions. We'll also consider how Adriana will need these skills in her future work as a CNA at AdultEdMed. Maybe we should start by looking at a common situation. Have you ever lost your cell phone or your keys maybe? It's a frequent occurrence for me, and I'm thinking that you may have had some experience with this too. First, you make the observation that your keys appear to be lost. Next, you try to remember when you used them last, and that starts your research. Then you develop a hypothesis or a guess that the keys fell to the bottom of your book bag. Next, you experiment by looking through all the nooks and crannies of your book bag, which brings you to the next step, where you draw a conclusion that the keys are not in the book bag. That means you need to go back to the hypothesis and the experiment stages. You develop a new hypothesis, and this time you decide to look in your jeans pocket. This, of course, leads you to your next experiment of actually looking into your jeans pocket. Finding your keys allows you to draw a conclusion that the keys were indeed in your jeans pocket, and you're happily on your way. So here are the steps that we used to find your keys. And amazingly, they're the same steps used in the scientific method of investigation. I'm sure that you noticed that we did a couple of these steps more than once. In fact, it is very possible and maybe even likely that you will use the hypothesis and experiment stages throughout the investigation. When you repeat these steps, it's very important that you change only one variable in each attempt at the experiment so that you can determine the best way to proceed. Changing too many things at once will leave you with more questions as to why your investigation came out the way it did. More on that later. In a very basic way, the scientific method is answering a question by going through a process or taking deliberate steps to get reliable results. You actually use this technique every single day. So let's take a closer look at the recognized steps for the scientific method, shall we? The first step is observation, and it's fairly straightforward. To do this step, you will literally use what you have in order to observe. You will look, listen, smell, touch, and maybe taste in order to assess information for the investigation. You'll use your 5 senses, and you already have everything that you need. Something tells me that Andriana will be using this step a lot while working with patients. Think of your own experience at a doctor's office. The first thing the doctor will do after greeting you is to look at an injury or in your ears, listen to your heart and lungs, touch a swollen area maybe, and so on. The doctor is doing the first step in the scientific method of investigation, observation. Now let's get to the next step, research. You're way familiar with this step because you probably research things every day. How many times do you pick up your cell phone or go to the computer and Google something? You probably do it fairly frequently, and that's good to get into the habit of searching for reliable information. The key here is to be selective of your resources. If you're researching information on the effects that a specific nutrient has on your body, for example, you may want to reach for information from people who have a lot of expertise in nutrition rather than a friend's post on Facebook. Background information concerning a subject needs to be accurate, reliable, and up to date. You'll want to use journals or online sources that have been properly vetted. Avoid blogs or out-of-date publications. Some of Andriana's research may be done on her own, but I'm guessing that she will be able to rely on doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals at AdultEdMed to get some answers that she needs. Now we get to the hypothesis. This is simply a prediction of what you think might happen, or what you think the result will be in the end. It is simply your best guess. And since you have done some research, it will be your best educated guess. This hypothesis should be stated with specifics that will begin with an action and what will be accomplished. Often, the hypothesis will have an if-then statement. If the temperature rises above the freezing point, then the ice will change from a solid to a liquid. When you make an educated guess, you're pointing the process in a specific direction. In this if-then statement, the specifics include the freezing temperature, 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius, and the specific change in the form of the ice, solid to liquid. Okay, here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. It's time for you to test your idea with an experiment. Your idea or hypothesis will be tested in this step, and that will allow you to collect a couple of types of data that will be analyzed in the next step. In the event the data that is collected in this experiment does not answer the original question, this step may need to be repeated. Some adjustments in the experiment may need to be made, but making small changes is the best way to approach this. In fact, it's always best to change only one variable of an experiment per try, so that you will be able to observe how specific things and variables of the experiment affect the results. While we're discussing variables, I will tell you about the types of variables that you might encounter in the science experiment. You'll look at independent variables, the things that you can change, and dependent variables, the things that you will measure. In the case of our ice experiment, the temperature is the independent variable, and the change in the form of the water is the dependent variable. This is also the step where data will provide qualitative and quantitative information that will be analyzed in the next step. Remember that qualitative data relates to descriptions such as the color, shape, general size, and that kind of thing. Quantitative data relates to the quantity or numbers, such as the exact measurement, specific temperature, precise weight, etc. Here's an overview of the experiment step. The experiment will be broken into two groups. The control group will be the normal. In the case of the ice experiment, the ice is the control, and the experimental group is where the action takes place. In the experimental group, you will find an independent variable, the thing that you will change, and the dependent variable, the thing that you will measure. In our ice experiment, the independent variable will be the temperature that will change, and the dependent variable will be the form of the water. Data will be collected from the dependent variable. The data will be qualitative and quantitative, or both. Now we come to the time for the analysis, or to draw a conclusion. At last you'll be able to organize and share what you've learned from the experiment step of this scientific investigation. In analyzing what happened in the experiment, you'll be able to see if the hypothesis you made was proven or not. This will be the step where you will find out if you made a correct prediction or an incorrect one. This step can be supported by statements, charts, graphs, and other proof of the outcome. All of this information about the scientific method of investigation is fairly interesting, but how will Andriana use this information in her new job at AdultEdMed? Let's take a look at a situation that Andriana could encounter in her work as a CNA. Then we can use some of what we just learned to challenge the conclusion. Here's the scenario. Our friend Andriana is a very friendly and bubbly person who enjoys people. She sometimes feels a bit uncomfortable speaking to large groups of people because she's an English language learner. Even though she's gone to ESL classes, she's sometimes timid about her command of the language. That's one reason she would enjoy talking with someone like Mr. Garcia, a patient at AdultEdMed. Jorge Garcia, a dementia patient, speaks English as a second language. Andriana could speak English with him to keep his mind active and to gain confidence with her own communication skills. During the last week, Mr. Garcia fell 3 times and received some nasty bruises as evidence. It was suggested that he may be developing some physical coordination issues due to dementia. While considering his falls, Andriana thought about the scientific method of investigation and decided to see if she could come up with some information on her own. Here's how her investigation went. She starts with the observation. She works with Mr. Garcia frequently and has not observed anything unusual in his physical coordination. She did some research and noticed that in his records, all the falls have occurred at night, after he'd gone to bed. He had fallen on his way to or from the bathroom in each case. Andriana made a guess, the hypothesis, that the falls were caused by the environment. Since Jorge was not showing signs of physical difficulty during the day and only falling at night, the reason for his falls could be something in his path. During the experiment portion of her investigation, Andriana carefully traced Jorge's route taken to the bathroom at night, and she looked to be sure that the lighting was sufficient and to be sure that there was nothing that would be a tripping hazard. She discovered that Mr. Garcia always wore slippers. This caused her to do a bit more research by examining the condition of the slippers. Andriana was ready to draw a conclusion after she learned that the lighting was sufficient for Jorge to get to and from the bathroom, and that there were no carpets or pieces of furniture or equipment that would make him trip. In her final bit of research, she discovered that the sole of his right slipper was becoming detached from the rest of the shoe, and she imagined that that was what was catching on the floor, causing him to fall. She shared her findings with her supervisor, and together they were able to get Mr. Garcia's slipper repaired, and the fall stopped. The scientific method of investigation. This is problem solving with a purpose. It works when you study science, it works for investigating problems on the job, and it works for finding keys. This is science you can use.